Hello. My name is Scott Kosnoff. I'm with Faegre Baker Daniels. I am your Room 1 MC. I'll also be taking drink orders during the break, so please have exact change. The room that you're in features the panel dealing with empowering an insurance workforce with talent and tech. Our moderator is Bill Hartnett of Hartnett Advisors. He's president of that group. He provides strategic advice on the transformational power of technology in business. For nearly 2 decades, Bill was Microsoft's top executive in the financial services industry, and he was affectionately known as Microsoft's godfather of financial services. Also of note, Bill is an avid sailor and a bronze medalist in yachting at the 1979 Pan American Games. Bill, take it away.
Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it. Thank you all. So I'm joined today. Let me introduce my cohorts up here. I'm joined today by Chris Mermetz. He's CEO and co-founder of Cookhouse Lab and Logic 3. And also by Dwayne Bollert, who's the global insurance industry lead for Mercer. And so these two gentlemen know quite a bit about this topic, capital management and workplace culture. So before we start, you probably noticed we're sitting in some odd-looking chairs up here. We thought, since all of us spend a lot of time in airplanes going to conferences like this or going to see clients, it might be interesting if this took the form of a conversation between the three of us that happened to be seated next to each other on one of the next flights we're on. So that's why we're here in these chairs. So I'm going to invite you to recline your seats here. These are actually airline seats, by the way. So we've reached cruising altitude, so we're going to kind of relax and just chat with each other. And to start off, when I was thinking about this topic, when I was with Microsoft, we did, I think was probably the first study about millennials and their attitudes about insurance specifically. And it was really trying to tease out, what technology our customers needed to employ to attract the next workforce. But what we found was, maybe it wasn't surprising, but it was pretty stark, is that the common theme was the millennial generation thought the insurance industry was old, populated by old people using out-of-date technology, and was pretty much the last place they'd ever want to go to work, right? So that obviously gave us a hook to get in and say, well, you really need to update your technology because this was before everybody had a cell phone in their pocket, before you could get internet at your desk. And you really need to start to look at that because they're going to bring their own technology. Even if you don't let them, they're going to bring it, right? So we started to have those conversations, but what we finally realized is that it really speaks to an HR crisis for the business. And the HR crisis really kind of settled around the culture of the industry was just, even if it weren't accurate what they said, a lot of it was accurate. And how do you create a culture that will not only retain all the talent you've had that's been there for years helping you grow your business, but attract the next generation of talent when they had diametrically opposed views of what the industry was. So I know you've done some thinking about this, Chris, so maybe make some observations. How do you create the right culture to attract the right talent?
Sure. So thank you for the question. So to give a bit of context, so I left the insurance industry working at a large retrocessionaire at the time in the early 2000s. And the reason was, and I ended up in the startup space accidentally, as most people do, was because it felt like a fairly soul-destroying job. So you had a beige cube, and at one point somebody actually came because I had the wrong chair for the level I was in the organization. Like that doesn't really make you feel like you're ever going to make a difference in the world. Yeah. So I left the industry in the early 2000s, and from 2002 to very recently, we've been building companies, and the belief that we always had when we started with 3 people or when we got to 100 people or 150 people was you really have to focus on the people first. It sounds simple, it sounds obvious, but you just have to be human about all of this. So don't worry about, we didn't even have an HR or a people and talent person for the first decade of our businesses, but you just do what seems right. And how do you want to be treated? And so it's a very simple, just make sure that you're human and humane about everything. But then we also, what we learned, whether it's acquiring talent from, because we have a great group of kids right out of school, we've got people who've got a bunch more experience, but it isn't a generational question. It really is more of, you have to create a movement. Like, what do people, you need to have that personal connection. Yes, we talk to AI companies, machine learning, and all the buzzwords, and we touch into all those organizations. But regardless of age, gender, where you are in an organization, you have to create that really personal connection and a belief. So that movement was really, like from day one, it was super important to us, and that gave us the ability to keep all these very smart people around us and attached to us. And as I said, we've been growing for the last number of years, and it's worked really well for us. And then very recently, our group of companies was acquired by RGAX, which is ultimately goes to the reinsurer. So there's always this dividing line that you're either in the startup space and you're going to have this cool, funky keg and ping pong table, or you're going to be part of a big strategic and you're going back to a beige cube. But that just doesn't exist anymore. So there's such interesting companies, whether you're in big business, whether you're consulting, insurance, reinsurance, there really are these really cool belief systems out there. And I was having as much fun today as I was 90 days ago, a year ago. So I think culture is becoming a much more main part of a conversation, and people really do believe that performance does come from a really strong culture. So I've certainly seen that in the last 20 years that I've been in and out of large companies, and it's been something that's been very important to us.
Yeah. And it is this, it's a stark thing, and we've made some progress. I mean, millennials like to work in teams, right? That's one of the characteristics you find when you do studies of them. And I do remember back then, one of the CEOs of a large life insurance company told me she brings young people in, and they ask, okay, where do I get all the data to do my work here? And she says, well, points to the filing cabinets that are lining the wall of the floor, and A starts there. And so she said they look at me like I have three heads and pretty much start glancing around where the elevator is, right? So with that kind of thing, it's really tough to create that team culture when it's, how I describe it is we've always had this apprenticeship culture in the insurance business, right? When you go and you work, you start as a junior underwriter or underwriting assistant, and then maybe after 5 or 6 years you get to be a senior underwriter, and then you're a chief underwriter after a 20-year career or something like that. Maybe that just doesn't work for people anymore. Expect to have 5 or 10 different jobs in their lifetime. They're not going to have a career where they do the same thing all the time. So,
absolutely.
Dwayne, I know you've done some studies on this recently, so maybe you can shed some more light on some of those issues.
Mercer's just completed an annual study we do called Talent Trends, and it cuts across all industries, but it's basically talent management trends out there. And a couple of things that come out of that I think are relevant here. One is you talk about millennials and how to attract them. That's important, but one of the main things that's come out of this is to try to have what we're calling a purpose-driven mission. And millennials clearly want that. You hear a lot about them not being motivated by money, but wanting to do good for society and those kinds of things. But we think everybody actually wants to have a purpose and work for a company that's doing important work. And in the insurance business, we've had several clients tell us that they'd kind of gotten away from that, but realistically, insurance actually has one of the best missions out there because you're protecting people. And I know all your salespeople talk about that all the time, but the organizations had kind of moved away from that. But you're protecting people in times of crisis, particularly if somebody dies or their house burns down or there's an accident. You're protecting them. You're providing that financial protection for them. We had one big European insurance company that decided that they had a new CEO, and so they were going to redo their mission statement and all that, like a lot of companies do. But what they found is once they restated it, it wasn't all that different from what it was before. It was a big life company, so it was financial protection for people. But then they communicated it, and they had just tremendous response from the employees, much more employee engagement after they'd gone through this process of recommunicating and so forth. So they really found that people did care about that. It got them back to the roots of what the insurance business is about, and getting back to that purpose was more exciting than we work for a stodgy old insurance company that does everything the same way. So that's one, a purpose-driven mission. Another is, I think, what Bill was just talking about, and that's more flexible career paths. I mean, I think we all know you've had the underwriters move up the chain. Everybody's got their own silo. You're an actuary, you pass an exam, you get a raise, you move up, et cetera. And that's not what people want today, and that's not really going to fit the way you need to work today, because you've got more flexible teams. You need to do different things now and then start over, do something different. The whole idea of innovation and experimentation, you need more of a lab type environment where you try things and move on. So having more flexible career paths is clearly one of the keys, and that's hard for insurance companies to do. Different ones are starting down that path, but it's difficult because you're still in a business that's highly regulated, so you need to balance the restrictions of that. You've got a conservative business that you're in because it's risk management. but being able to move people around, giving them different experiences, focusing on their skills, not just a job as defined in the traditional way, needs to change. That's another thing that has come out of the research that we've done. And the third one is more openness about pay and performance management. So, you know, it's very difficult in America generally to talk about pay, but if you think about other organizations, the military, everybody knows what everybody makes. It's taboo to ask about that, but people want to know more about that, and I think that's going to start to happen more because you're going to move people around. They're not going to be in that, underwriter 1 makes this much, underwriter 2 makes this much, and so on. You're going to be moving people around, so you're going to have more openness and a fairness in the pay system as people move around to try different things, get new experiences, and build their careers over time. On the performance management side, a lot of companies have started to move away from performance management ratings, for example, with the idea that, well, that'll be more flexible, we won't be tagging you with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what we've also seen is some moving back and putting those back in place, because part of the process there is just a communication to your employees of how well they're doing. And so they found that if they got rid of the ratings, that was at least a benchmark for people of whether they were doing well. So there needs to be a better balance there of actually just doing the communication. Whether you have a rating or not is really not that important, but if you're doing the communication, telling people how they're doing, and then helping them with their career management. You know, we were talking with a client recently about this. Is that a role for the HR function? Is that something you need to get all your managers to do to help people decide what their next career move ought to be? Because, you know, the young people certainly could use advice on that, but you also have to be open as an organization to moving those people around and treating them as organizational resources, not just, you know, your department. So those would be the three main things we've talked about.
One thing that brings up is that, for a lot of the 90s and early 2000s, actually until recently, and some companies still do this, is we had this on the performance management side, is the old Jack Welch model of, the bottom 10%, even if they're high performers, need to go every year just to keep everybody on their toes, right? What's your thoughts on that, and is that still active in a lot of places, or you think that's
It's active in some places, but not that many. Part of the problem there was, everybody viewed GE as the model of management. And a lot of companies put in those kinds of things. I used to work at MetLife before Mercer, and they put in one of those, and it was going to be, we're going to get tough. But they didn't actually fire the bottom 10%. They just shuffled them around. They had probably the most absurd thing I've ever seen in that they would rotate who got the bad rating within departments. Well, we're not going to fire him. He didn't really do that poorly, but we gave him a 2 last year, so we're going to give her a 2 this year, and we won't hold it against him. It was absurd, and it's because it didn't fit the overall system. GE was a place run by the numbers. If you made your numbers, you were in, and if you didn't, you were out. So having that kind of performance management system is pretty much aligned with that approach. If you're not going to do it that way, if you're trying to be team-oriented and not just numbers-driven, or you've got to be more creative, or there are lots of other business needs that you might have, then that kind of a system doesn't work well at all, and it certainly doesn't work well for organizations like we were just talking about that are trying to move towards a team orientation with flexible career paths and things like that. It doesn't mean you don't have performance management and you don't get rid of people who aren't performing, but to have it as rote and automatic as that is not the best approach.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. So, and we've seen over the years as well, right? Like there's always a struggle over, you have this very kind of free-flowing, everybody does what they want, or structure, and it always has to be somewhere in between. We had made one of the stupidest decisions of our businesses at one point was, you know what, we're all purpose-driven, so why does anybody really need a boss? So we did that for about 4 minutes because somebody called in sick.
Yeah.
Who do I call? Well, it's a great question. I don't know. You don't have a boss. So that was stupid. So, but what we found is you need these guardrails, right? And whether it's a creative part of your business, or we've got maintenance sides of our business, you need to know what those guardrails are, and people want to know that. Yeah. We toyed with getting rid of ratings at one point, but people also want to know and deserve to know how they're performing relative to their peers. So it's a battle, it's a struggle, but it seems to be leaning a little bit more on the structure side than not, but I think it's the way it should go.
Yeah. I worked in one of those organizations with the, let's give everybody a 2 every other review period, and it's strange, right? But I think that's one of the things that Satya Nadella did at Microsoft when he got there, was got rid of that kind of system and the forced curve and all that stuff, and it's clearly done wonders for that company. But one of the things that, when we're talking about, back to this culture area, you get younger people coming into the business, not even just younger people now, a lot of people that have been around the business for a while, baby boomers that, now use technology pretty extensively in their personal lives. What's your attitude about virtual teams, right? People working from home, or people kind of telecommuting, which has a lot of other benefits, reduces office space requirements and all that kind of thing. But the culture of the industry has always been this hierarchical. You got to show up every day from 9 to 5, and you get your hour break and your hour worth of breaks and hours worth of lunch, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
What do you find, or have you done any thinking about that?
For sure. So our belief is that we want the smartest people no matter where they sit. And there are parts of our businesses that is an insurance company. We do outsource underwriting, outsource administration. You want to really make people feel part of something bigger. It's better if they're together. But again, our overarching principle is if we just want curious, smart, motivated people, and if you happen to not be, I'm based in Toronto, which is where most of our people are on the Logic 3 side, it doesn't really matter where you sit. Technology has gotten away the need that you have to all be in one place, but it does make the culture conversation a little bit more important, because it's easy to forget about people who aren't there, and it's harder for them to experience what you're trying to build. So we have to do certain things to keep that check. But location doesn't really matter anymore.
How about, kind of follow up on that, one of the things that in the tech industry, we almost don't care when the developers come into work or if they come into work. Some people show up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and work most of the night because they're more productive then, and nobody cares, right? With tech becoming more and more important in the insurance business, how do you manage that environment where, developers kind of, a lot of them are prima donnas, right? No disrespect intended, but they're really good at what they do, and they're not interchangeable. They're not widgets. So how do you manage that kind of environment? Do you have any experience in that at all?
Yeah, I'll start, and Dwayne, I'd like to hear your comment as well. So again, personally, from our perspective, it always goes back to what's the client need. So there's parts of our business that people have normal office hours. So if we're doing outsourced underwriting, we need to be there from your typical 9 to 5 when everybody else is working. So you always have to look back to what are you doing for your customer, and work around that. But where we do offer flexibility, we offer flexibility. So I don't think we had people who kind of worked night shift at one point, and that didn't really work out it didn't feel like they were part of the same company. So we give a lot of flexibility in terms of when you come in and not, but we haven't seen that I'm going to work from 6 p.m. till 3 a.m.
Okay.
I don't know if it would matter if the right person did want to do that, as long as they perform, but it makes it harder to feel like and connect with the rest of the people. And again, going back to you want this to be a really human experience. It's hard to do that if you're not with the other humans.
Yeah. What do you see across your practice in that area?
We did a study a couple of years ago, 20 big global insurance companies, and asked them about the business challenges and then the corresponding workforce challenges. And there were lots of specifics came out of that, but the main overarching thing from an organizational perspective was they needed more flexible organizations. The insurance companies had always been organized in silos, and they were pretty rigid. And so this idea of work remotely, work from home is just one example of being more flexible in your organization. So if you've got a business issue and it doesn't work for you, then you don't do that. Yeah. But where it can work for you, like for developers, like tech companies do, insurance companies hadn't really been structured to do that. One of the things that came out of this latest study is 96% of the executives said that they were going to make organizational structure changes in the next year. So that's virtually everyone, right? And our interpretation of that is that means it's going to be ongoing. It's going to be a fluid change over time, and you're going to just morph as you need to, as opposed to saying, we're organized by geography and whatever now, and we're going to go by product or whatever. It's not going to work that way. On one level it is, but for getting work done, for putting teams together, for recruiting and using different kinds of people, you need a more flexible management system. Yeah. We had one good example. Everybody talks about big data and data scientists. We had one client hired 200 data scientists and put them in various parts of the business. And so they thought that was going to be the greatest thing, right? They're going to get all these new ideas. After about a year and a half of them had quit. and they did exit interviews and so forth and said, what happened? And the bottom line was they didn't change the way they managed people. They still managed like a hierarchy. So they had all these data scientists come up with some cool new stuff. Then they'd go talk to the underwriters, and the underwriters would say, well, that's not the way we do it. So then the scientists are frustrated. Now, they don't care about hierarchy and promotions. They just want to work on cool stuff, like developers. So what they concluded now in phase 2, they've got to change their performance management. They've got to change their organizational rewards and things like that to be more flexible. So they didn't have any problem attracting the people, but they couldn't keep them because they were managing them in the old way.
Yeah, and I've kind of seen the flip side of that too from some insurance companies. When you look at, okay, what are the qualities you're looking for in bringing new people in? And most people think, well, we need more innovative people here. Some people are imaginative thinkers, right? But then what they usually do is they put them on an innovation team.
Yeah.
So all the cool kids are working on this new stuff, right?
Right.
And everybody else in the organization hates them.
Yeah.
So eventually,
Yep.
that culture just drives them all back out again. So
Right.
that it's a very weird dynamic.
Yeah, that is a good one. Another example that is working now, they've given us permission to say the name, but Aegon has created a digital academy. And so they wanted it to be more than just a typical training process. So they brought a bunch of people in from various parts of the organization, targeted initially to the ones where they thought they needed more innovation and digital technology was changing fastest and so forth. So they brought them all in, brought in outside people, helped educate them, train them on more digital things, and then they put them right back into the businesses to solve their day-to-day problems. And it's working so well that now they've got people asking to be in the next class, But that's where it's a better example than the data scientists example, where they actually put them in, spread them out, and they were working together with the existing people with their new knowledge. So that worked better, and they're expanding that now to spread that throughout the organization.
Great. So on the topic of qualities, what qualities will you look for, Chris, when you're bringing people into organization?
Great question. So it's where we've been. Again, it sounds obvious, but you can motivation has to be there, right? Because you can train people, anything into people who are motivated and are hungry, want to do things. But the biggest quality, the personality trait, is just curiosity. Because if they ask interesting questions of us while we're interviewing them, and we always ask, why do you want to work here? And so those are some pretty fundamental, it goes back to that personal, why do you want to be here, and what are you curious about? So that curiosity has been a really good marker for us. And we've hired people all parts of the organization, but that seems to be a thread that people stay with us, they grow, they excel, and we've had great success.
Yeah, that's great. And so kind of picking up on that and going, I don't know if you've had, again, on the kind of tech theme, and we're here at a technology conference with GAA people presenting, and we see a lot of these cool new applications out there. When you're in an industry where they replace systems, whether they're core claims or policy or other systems, roughly every decade, right? And we're in a world of Moore's Law that's getting even faster than Moore's Law to some extent, and you can't really wait that long to depreciate. Some of it's a financial problem. The CFO can't depreciate that. He's going to have an 8-year depreciation schedule at a minimum before he can get the old technology off the books. You're almost at a world where you have to expense technology. And is you seeing that at all affect the insurance workforce or any of your clients trying to bring technical people in to develop cell phone apps, develop smartphone apps, or the next digital customer engagement applications? How is that working?
Well, I think you can do it a couple ways, right? You can try to retrain your current people, you can try to hire new people, or you can rent it, basically outsource it. And I think we're seeing a mix of those, and it's all part of trying to build a new, what we would call a work labor ecosystem. Where are you going to get work done? Some of that stuff, if you think you've got the best technology people and they can do those apps for you, great. If not, go outside and get it done faster. My former employer had ancient systems like you were talking about, and they tried 3 or 4 different times to change them, but they did it all in-house, and it didn't really work. And finally, they got a new CIO. He came in, started bringing some people outside, and so on, and got it done. But I think it's relevant for all the parts of the business that need that digital technology. Is you can't hire all, and you've got to, because everybody's a technology company now, right? So you've got to compete with Google and Apple and Facebook, and you'll get some of those people, but you're not going to get all of those people.
Right.
So I think that this whole idea of a more flexible organization means inside and outside the organization as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, the last place a lot of like the best developers on the planet, they're not looking to go to work from the insurance industry.
Right.
They're real smart. They're looking for stock options someplace where they're going to become millionaires.
Well, that's why there's so many insurtechs
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're all here.
Put that outside the organization so the big behemoth doesn't squash innovation.
Exactly. So we talked a lot since it is an airplane, but there's a lot of people in the cabin.
Yeah.
So if anybody out here has any questions, I'd like to get one. Yes.
Nick Lambrelli from Rethought. Onboarding. Talk to anyone that's fairly young coming into insurance, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's their first taste of the company. I had one example where they weren't ready for me. It took them 2 weeks to get me a computer. I had to bring my laptop in. I was an executive.
Yeah.
The person that was reporting to me, 6 months before they got him his laptop. That can't work. It's such a distasteful element when you first start. It's almost like we talk a lot about culture, but no one does anything about onboarding.
Yeah.
The first taste and getting them acclimated to what they're going to do. Do you have any advice, insight on that?
Well, that's one of those where I think look to the outside because other people know how to do that already. Some insurance companies are starting to do that, but clearly Amazon has spoiled everybody in that respect, right? You were expecting, young people are expecting, punch a couple things in on your phone and you should be there. And there are some companies starting to do that. We're working on some of those kinds of technologies, but that is available out there. So I think the easiest thing is to buy that and do it quickly.
The one thing that we've done that helped is everybody, when they come in, they get a buddy. Because even if if something doesn't work, because invariably something always doesn't work, but at least if they've got a buddy, they got a bit of a support system. And then, again, it sounds obvious and goofy, but it's actually helped a lot. We do onboarding and we do meetings and company meetings and all that, but that buddy's been the most impactful.
Yeah, I think, and ironically, I think I have a couple of friends who've gone to work for Amazon over the last couple of years, and their experience is not a whole lot different. Right? Where's my laptop, right? So it's not even the Amazons who've set different expectations, they don't get it right all the time either.
If you're a Prime member, you could order it and get it.
You could probably order it and get it the next day. Exactly. Should go through the internal ordering system. So I think we have time for one more. Yes, right here.
Yeah, all the talk has been about accommodating the admittedly high-value young information workers. My own experience is that I've experienced a lot of arrogance on their part, a lack of respect, profound lack of respect for the received wisdom of the business, why this business is different than others. Can any of you speak to that?
I'll start if you want. So, and I specifically said at the beginning, for that exact reason that it isn't just a millennial group that we're trying to employ or that we're trying to appeal to. There is you want a whole vast labor talent. Our take is age doesn't matter. Yes, there's some different expectations for kids who are coming into the workforce now, just on how they grew up. But we put the exact same value and credibility on, because those kids can't perform and learn if we don't have seasoned, experienced people as well. And we play this game fact or crap. Is it fact or is it crap? And it's a fact that everybody adds value to the organization and everybody's creative and everybody can be innovative. It's just you can't box people into these things. So we make sure that we have these collisions of not only groups and kind of functions, but generations as well, because it's important.
Yeah, and I think that, thanks for bringing that up, because that is a great point. I think it really is important to not only attract and retain new young talent coming into the business, because we do have a lot of people that are aging out of the business and just want to go to move to Florida, right? But you want to retain them as well, because there's a lot of really good talent there that does have the institutional knowledge, because it's a different business, and you don't really immediately get it when you come in. And with that, I want to kind of pick up on something that Dwayne said at the beginning about what a great business this is. One of my favorite quotes is that insurance is the DNA of capitalism, right? Nothing happens without insurance. It's the best business on the planet. I think I've spent my entire professional career in one way or another in the insurance business, because it's just a fascinating thing, and nothing else happens in this world without insurance. You can't build a building, you can't start a business, you can't do anything, buy a car, buy a house, unless you can get insurance. So we should all celebrate that, and I think that's one of the things we can do is kind of as evangelists for the business, is point that out to people when they start to complain about their insurance agent didn't do this or their insurance company screwed them on that. Remind them what insurance does. You know, you pay a small price for a lot of peace of mind, and it's a great enabling business. So I think we're through, right, Scott? Is it about time? Okay, so I'll invite you to bring your tray tables and seat backs up to their upright position now, and prepare for landing. And thanks everybody for
Let's
joining
thank our
us. Thank
panel.
you.